Hi everyone and welcome to Lipstick on a Rig. Today we're doing another one skein gift bundle challenge, and as part of that challenge we are crocheting this very fun beanie with this really cool swirl. And for this beanie I'm working with some size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn, and this is just the Big Twist Value brand and the color is Dark Teal. I'm also going to be using a size H or 8 or 5 millimeter crochet hook. And we're going to begin by attaching the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 17. And once you have your 17 chains in place, then we're going to turn our work and skip that turning chain, and we're going to place 1/2 double crochet in each stitch in our row. So when we get to the end of our row, we should have a total of 16 half double crochet stitches. And when you get to the end of your row, then you're just going to chain 1 and turn your work. So you can see here that with our half double crochet stitch, we have some additional loops, primarily in the front of our stitch. So it might look like your stitch actually has 3 loops. So if you're looking at your stitch, you want to work in the top portion of your stitch in your front loop only right here. So this might sort of look like a middle loop of your stitch. So however it's easiest for you to find it, that's what I recommend. But we're going to place 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in this first stitch here. So we're going to skip our turning chain. We're going to yarn over and insert our crochet hook in that front loop only. Then we're going to yarn over and drop all loops on our crochet hook for a half double crochet slip stitch. From here, we're just going to continue to place 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the front loop only of each stitch in our row. So we should have a total of 16 half double crochet slip stitches when we're done. And it is important to keep your stitches rather loose when you're working with these because they can get really tight very quickly. And at the end of your row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. So the pattern for this row is going to be to place 1/2 double crochet in the top portion of each of your stitches. So again, if you're looking at this sort of from the front, you can see that you kind of have 3 loops you could work in. We want to focus on the 2 at the top, sort of the traditional V portion of our stitch. So we're going to skip that turning chain, and then we're going to place 1/2 double crochet in each of our 16 stitches, working in both loops. So last row we were placing half double crochet slip stitches, now we're placing half double crochets. When you get to the end of your row and you have your 16 half double crochets, then you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. So from here, the pattern's just going to be to follow those last 2 rows over and over and over again. You're just going to follow those until the brim reaches your desired length, which for me is going to be somewhere between 18 and 20 inches. And once you've gotten this to your desired length, go ahead and fold it in half, and you want to make sure that you've ended your last row to where your crochet hook is on the opposite side of your starting tail. And another thing to note, make sure that the side that you want facing out is tucked in for now. So from here, make sure you've placed a chain 1 at the end of your last row. And working in the first row that we created, we're going to insert our crochet hook in that first available loop there. And so this is going to be the extra loop from your chain stitches. Then we're going to insert our crochet hook up underneath our full last stitch. And we're going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on our crochet hook for a slip stitch. Then we're just going to repeat that process in each of our stitches going up our row to fully join our brim together. And so now we're going to fold our brim in half lengthwise so that the pretty side, or the side that we want facing out, is facing out. And you can use stitch markers or some scrap yarn, and what we're going to do is section our brim off into 4 equal parts. And once you have your 4 equal parts, it should look something like this. So what we're going to do from here is we are going to tuck our starting tail in that fold. Then what we need to do is connect our 2 edges together. So I'm going to do that by placing a slip stitch through both of them, sort of near where my crochet hook is. Then we're going to chain 2. We need to place 92 double crochets going all the way around the edge of our brim here. And so if you sectioned your brim off, then what you want to do is place 23 double crochets in each of our 4 sections. So there are a couple of things to note while you're doing this. Your chain 2 does count as your first double crochet, and you're going to be joining the 2 edges of your brim together while you place these stitches, and you probably don't have enough available loops to place your 23 double crochets, so in a majority of them you're going to need to place 2 double crochets. And this doesn't have to be exact, but you want to try to space them out as evenly as you can. Since we don't have traditional stitches to work in, we're just working in the available loops on the top edge. So what you're going to do is you're just going to yarn over and insert your crochet hook in your available loops here on both edges. Yarn over and drop those 2 loops. Yarn over and drop 2 loops at a time to complete your double crochet stitches. And we're just going to repeat this going all the way around our row until we have our 92 double crochets. And again, that should be 23 double crochets in each of our little sections here. And when you get to the end of your row, you should have 92 double crochets when you include your chain 2 stitch. So what we're going to do is skip that chain 2 and we're going to slip stitch into our first double crochet. And from here, we're going to chain 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to place 1 front post stitch around this very first double crochet where we just placed our slip stitch in chain 1. So to do that, yarn over, and then we're going to wrap our crochet hook around the post portion of the stitch. So we're going to insert our crochet hook in the gap between our chain 2 and our double crochet. Then we're going to wrap our hook around that stitch, just like this. We're going to yarn over and pull up through the post, and then yarn over and drop 2 loops, and yarn over and drop our last 2 loops. So we're going to place a front post stitch in our next 2 stitches, following that same method of just wrapping our crochet hook around the posts. So now we're going to do something a little bit funky, but it's not hard, I promise. Locate your chain 2 stitch right here beside your first double crochet where you placed your first front post stitch. We're going to place a stitch to cross over our front posts. So we're going to place a triple crochet there, and if you're not familiar with that stitch, I'll show you. All you're going to do is yarn over twice. Now we're going to work around our post just like we've been doing, rather than the top of our stitch. So what we're going to do is insert our crochet hook between our last double crochet in our chain 2. And then we're going to wrap our hook around our chain 2, just like we've been doing. Then we're going to yarn over and drop our chain 2 stitch, and then yarn over and drop 2 loops at a time to finish out our triple crochet post stitch. So while it sounds really confusing, it's actually pretty simple. So from here, what we're going to do is skip our next double crochet altogether, and then place a front post stitch in our following 3 double crochet stitches. And once you have your 3 front post stitches in place, then go back to your skipped double crochet stitch, and we're going to place a triple crochet post stitch there, just like we did for our chain 2. So we're going to yarn over twice and wrap our crochet hook around the post that forms that skipped double crochet. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the post, and then yarn over and drop 2 loops at a time to complete our stitch. So from here, we're going to follow that pattern to place the rest of our post cable stitches. So I'll show you that repeatable pattern once again. We're going to skip our next double crochet, and then we're going to place 1 front post stitch around our next 3 double crochets. And once you have your 3 front post stitches in place, then we're going to place our triple crochet post stitch around our skipped double crochet stitch. And there you go. And we've now completed our first 3 post cable stitches. So we're just going to follow that pattern going all the way around our row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 23 of these crisscross post cable stitches. And at the end of your row, your pattern should look something like this. So from here, we're going to place a slip stitch in the top of our first front post stitch, so right here. And again, we're going to chain 1. And the pattern from here is going to be to follow like stitches. So what we're going to do is work in this very first front post stitch, and we're going to place another front post stitch by working around the post of our front post stitch like this. And we're going to place one front post stitch in our next 2 stitches to line up with our last row. And once you have your 3 front post stitches, then you're going to work backwards in your last triple crochet post stitch. So this is not the one directly below you, but the last one from your last row right here. And we're going to place a triple crochet post stitch around this previous post here. So we're going to yarn over twice and then insert our crochet hook around the post there, just like this. Yarn over and pull up through the post, and then yarn over and drop 2 loops at a time to finish out your stitch. So from here, moving on to our next section, we're going to place one front post stitch in these 3 front post stitches from our previous row. And then working backwards, back in our very first row's first triple crochet post stitch, we're going to place another one. So we're basically going to be working underneath the very last triple crochet post stitch that we just made. So right here. Just like that. And we're just going to repeat that going all the way around our row. So we're going to place one front post stitch in these 3 front post stitches, and then we're going to place a triple crochet post stitch back in our last triple crochet post stitch right here. And at the end of your row, your pattern should look something like this. And so again, we are going to slip stitch into our first front post stitch. And from here, we're just going to repeat our last row for multiple rows to build the body of our beanie. And I went ahead and placed 16 total rows of my crisscross stitch. Of course, you can place less or more rows depending on how tall you want your beanie. So now we're going to begin our decreasing pattern by chaining 1, and we're going to place one front post stitch around our first 2 front posts. And once you have your 2 front post stitches in place, then we're going to skip our very last front post stitch, and we're going to place our triple crochet post stitch, just like we've been doing, in the stitch behind us. Just like this. So now we're going to repeat this process, placing one front post stitch in our first 2 stitches, skipping our 3rd front post stitch, and then placing our triple crochet post stitch. So go ahead and repeat this going all the way around your row, and when you get done, you should have a total of 69 stitches. And at the end of your row, you're just going to slip stitch into your first front post stitch and chain 1 again. And for this next row, all we're going to do is just skip our 2nd front post. So we're going to place our first front post stitch in that first front post, and then we're going to place our triple crochet post stitch like normal, and just skip that 2nd post stitch altogether. And we're just going to repeat that pattern going all the way around our row, and we should have a total of 46 stitches when we're done. And again, at the end of your row, you're just going to slip stitch into your first front post stitch, and we're going to chain 1 again. So from here, we're going to skip our front post stitches all together and diving right into our triple crochet post stitches. We're just going to place a regular post stitch, but we're still going to work backwards. So we're going to start with our last triple crochet post stitch, and we're just going to place a regular front post stitch there. Then we're going to move on to our next one, sort of seamlessly, placing another front post stitch there. So we're going to place one front post stitch in each of our previous rows triple crochet post stitches, and when we get to the end of our row, we should have a total of 23 post stitches. And as you can see, we've started sort of pulling our post stitches in this sort of funky spiral, doing that. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to place a slip stitch in our very first front post stitch. So it's a little bit different this row. And that definitely sort of helps close this gap here at the top of our beanie. From here, we're going to go ahead and cut and tie off our yarn, but we want to leave a pretty long tail of about 1 foot in length. So now what you want to do is just weave your tail in and out of your front post stitches that you created in your last row. So all you're going to do is just weave this underneath every other front post stitch all the way around your row. And once you're done weaving your tail around your row, then you're just going to pull it nice and tight to scrunch up the top. And from here, we're just going to insert our crochet hook in any available loop that's pretty easy to work in, and you're going to create a loop with your tail by inserting your fingers in that loop. And then you're just going to draw your tail around your loop so that you can create a really nice and tight knot there. And you can repeat this process on the other side of your hole if that did not close the gap entirely. But once you've gotten your hole basically closed, then you can draw your tail to the inside of your beanie and use it as an anchor for a pom-pom. And I am going to attach my DIY faux fur pom-pom to this, so I will link to that in the description for you. And after adding your pom-pom, your beanie should look something like this. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.